Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 5 of Just a Sec. My name's Jason. I'm your host for today, and we've got a really exciting show lined up for you. I'm going to bring on our guest speakers. Well, not our guest speakers. You guys host it every single month, so we'll bring on the crew. Steve, Jags, Dakota, welcome back. It's nice to be back on the show. I just have to say before we start, I was really hurt that last episode we did a live crossing from Black Hat and I did not get one mention whatsoever. So I know the show must go on, but it would have been nice.
We were putting
to have
on
like
a brave
little
face.
We were so caught up with
the
disco DJ headsets.
That's true.
I mean, you guys did look good. You look good. You know. It would have been better with me, but just saying.
Much better.
No one doubted.
Okay.
As I was prepping for this call earlier in the day, I was walking around the house and this exact scenario popped into my head of being like, I know for certain we're gonna get crap on the live stream for not having
preparing for this.
Well, yes, mentally, yeah, it's really
mentally, it's taxing.
I care a lot about the listeners.
Anyway, I had to say it. So let's quickly introduce you guys for those who haven't met you before. Unfortunately, also, and I will mention it because you guys didn't mention me. We don't have Drea this week, unfortunately. Our Dr. Drea, she's unavailable, but she'll be back next episode, no doubt. So it's going to be Jags, Dakota, and Steve carrying the torch this week. So to introduce Dakota, he spends most of his time researching how China's government aims to improve its offensive hacking capabilities. And when he's not working, I actually want to know, when you're listening to the great British Bake Off theme song, do you cook? Are you a cook? Are you a chef?
I am. Yeah, I'm a unprofessional home cook. You can find some of my better works at the bottom of garbage bins across American household parties. Happy to cook, anything of anybody's interest. No claims on whether or not it's gonna be delicious.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right, we've also got Jags joining us. Jags this week's become a sellout for mainstream, just in case anyone doesn't know. He's joined LinkedIn. So if you want to go on, hey, you knew that was coming. Like, you knew it was coming. So if you want to connect with Jags, make sure you follow him on X and Blue Sky, but he's also now on LinkedIn. I'm sure he'll have some thoughts. But he pretty much does everything that entities around the world, long history and tracking adversaries, espionage, and he's currently obsessed with AI. I'm sure he's going through waves. So welcome, Jags.
Thanks, man.
And then last but not least, we have Steve, our TV VCR repair guy. He also, helps us maintain the streams and occasionally, looks into what adversaries are doing around the world. He's got a long history in intel and cyber and runs our really everything from an adversary perspective on managed detection response, hunting, and his work spans both public and private sector. His passions are judging other people's tastes in music. You know what? I don't even know what your taste in music is, so I feel like that's a whole
makes it easier.
This could be a countdown topic maybe for next month. And eating sweets. What's your favorite sweet, Steve?
I'm game for any music, any and all. Depends on what I'm doing.
All right. Let's jump in. So September's master topic is, we're going to one of the groups. So APT 2029, using watering holes. Guys, what and why? What is this and why is it important? Steve, I'll hand it over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, I think this one's interesting because I think there's a couple of things at play here. One is APT 29, for those who aren't familiar, attributed to SVR, one of the most sophisticated, technically speaking, of the cyber intrusion group. It's been around for a long time, done lots of bad stuff. So you got on one hand this mentality of technology, and that is what makes groups do certain things and their capabilities. On the other hand, you have watering hole attacks, which are typically viewed as like pretty low level, pretty low brow. You're just throwing a net out in the middle of the ocean and like whatever comes in. So I think what's interesting on this is like this collision of perceived super high-end, technically strong adversaries and this like very low end, very common, not so targeted attempts to do stuff. So that's why I think I wanted to kind of flag this one for discussion. And I think what's also pretty interesting here is two things just like jump off the page. The first is this is not the first time APT-29 has been attributed to doing waterhole attacks. This is the third time. They did it in 2021 that we know of. They did it in 2024 that we know of. And they did it last month in August. So that alone is interesting. They don't do it all the time, but they do it more than once. So I guess is 3 a trend maybe? Question mark. And then the other thing is once you look at what they're actually doing with the watering hole attack is essentially, and I'm gonna beat this dead horse. I beat every single one of these. They want to use it to become illicit valid users. They want to bypass Microsoft authentication. They're not trying to hack anybody. They're trying to become valid users. So I'm incapable of looking past an intrusion that allows us to talk about illicit valid access. So that's why I think this was kind of an interesting topic was that lay of the land. I don't know. Am I crazy here, guys?
It's not beyond the pale. If anything, like we've actually seen some pretty interesting watering hole attacks from Russian threat actors in the past, particularly like, back in the day, Epic Turla, Glug, that kind of activity. Some of it can be really interesting, right? Like, really, the issue here is it an open watering hole attack where anybody can just kind of float by and get hit, and that's sort of it's very mass, and you're very likely to get caught. Or in some of the higher end ones, what we would see is like they would go hit an internal resource for an organization, and they would create a watering hole essentially around like a very specific niche industry thing, like some nuclear safety website that you only expect very particular individuals to go to, and then you'd get that kind of deployment. I'll be honest with you, I am less fascinated by APT-29 doing the watering hole thing right now as I am with Amazon having a threat intel team and actually publishing stuff. Like this is the first time the first time in a long while that I can remember that we have seen Amazon actually putting something out. So I'm much more interested in what about this campaign has actually made them do it. And I don't know if we have the answer to that, but that is more notable to me than the technique itself or than this particular threat actor.
They do have new security leadership over at Amazon, and so that may be part of the new direction. But I would also flag that they did some pretty interesting stuff at Black Hat and DEF CON this year, offering serialized tokens for attendees that if you submitted vulnerability reports at some point in the future and used and provided the token number on this physical challenge coin, they would actually give you a 10% bump on any remunerations for submissions to their security program. So I do think it's quite interesting, Jags, to your point, that they're kind of moving in this direction. But back to the original topic, I'm just thankful that these guys took the time to spoof the Cloudflare websites. Like at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they start doing the image captchas, but we're training, Russian image detection algorithms on US combat vehicles. Like I think there's a way to like even go one step above this in like the McKinsey-fication of the attack chain and just push you to be like, is this an Abrams? Yes or no? I think they're missing out on some real opportunities here.
What is it from a hoof to tail, right? Like it's they're making use of all
the goodness, squeeze it all out while you're at it.
All of it. Let's make sure we're training classifiers. We're using this for the war efforts and everything along the way.
At this point,
too, like one thing. Oh, you Dakota, sorry.
No. I was saying there's no reason not to do it that way.
I just I think watering hole attacks are always kind of interesting because they're either really basic or they're actually like pretty interesting. And the more you dive into the interesting ones, like the more stuff shakes out. And you keep coming back to this thing around like ultimately the whole reason we talk about these threats and look at these threats is so you can prevent them, you can delay them, you can respond to them, you can remediate them. It's really hard to respond to compromised illicit access that you have zero visibility into it occurring and where it occurred. Like, good luck finding that on your SIM. That's not how any of it works. So actually, I'm genuinely surprised we do not see more watering hole attacks from big advanced actors. And maybe we do, and maybe we just don't see them.
I think that's the real the real kicker right there.
Yeah, I don't want to come too far down on the security applications along the way, but you're basically talking about having some proper browser visibility, and I think that's something that if you're Google, you will have some access to. But beyond that, if these are more sophisticated watering holes, if these are not just like some, a straight up redirection, of course, is something that you're going to be able to see in certain network logs. But if what we're talking about is injecting just certain kinds of logic or, through scripts, and you have a legitimate site, the visibility for this can be quite limited and complex. So it's all about how you're playing it.
Yeah, it's a pretty profound topic. That's why I just think this is an interesting thing to look at.
All right, guys, very interesting. Do we have some research out on APT29 recently, or where were you referencing, Jags? It was Amazon.
Oh yeah, so the Amazon themselves came up with they figured out this campaign. There's been quite a bit of work around APT29 and sort of like sporadic bursts, which I think goes to speak to how interesting and good the team has gotten, right? Like I think the last really big campaign from them that I remember was the Microsoft one, right? Like where they pulled off some pretty interesting hack in there. So I don't know how we're characterizing APT29 these days. I think that might, from an attribution perspective, that may actually be kind of a clustering nightmare that we probably shouldn't be referring to with that name. But that's beyond the scope of this discussion.
The fun and games of attribution, right?
That's all fun and games.
All right, guys, we're going to switch gears into our countdown topics for the week. So we have some really fun topics. The first one, we're going to start off with 0 days in WhatsApp and Apple. Who's going to kick us off here? Steve, you going to take the button?
Yeah, I can take this one too, because I think this is going to be kind of similar to the last conversation. You've got some pretty sophisticated, super fascinating technical things. You actually got like another one of these events where you've got, in essence, like multiple O days chained together to kind of create this like all caps Voltron O day. And this one ends up being a no-click mobile device compromise. And one, I just think like that ability for attackers to to find an O day and then do it again and chain them together like that's impressive. I know we don't ever want to give the bad guys credit, but like that's grown-up stuff. That's real deal. And then anything around mobile, I just think is so interesting because, and I'm going to get a little hand wavy here, but mobile is ultimately about targeting individuals. It's really not about compromising organizations. It's about compromising a person. And that is just so nefarious. Like, and I'm not trying to ever make light of anyone's tragedies or challenges, but it's one thing to steal credit card numbers from a bank. It's an entirely different thing to subvert an individual's total life to find something that's like so dangerous or hidden or makes them so vulnerable. And that's a very broad scope there. But that's why I thought this one was worth flagging is, this isn't new. We've seen this stuff before, but not very often. But whoever's putting that much effort into compromising a mobile device ultimately is just telling us they really care about who their targets are.
And that they're really well funded. I think, the WhatsApp is like a really good case in point where they were awarded 147 million in damages in the court case against NSO Group. And so you see this type of activity taking place again. We just talked about problems in attribution around APT29. This is another case where attribution really matters if somebody's going to have to pay out some cash.
All right, Dakota, we've seen public companies go on the offense a few times. The latest seems to be Google. What's happening?
Yeah, we have a really good piece out from VP of Cybersecurity Strategy here, Brandon Wales, through Lawfare about some policy avenues for disruption by companies. I think Jags actually has a pretty interesting take around the implications for talking about doing disruption now versus perhaps having an obligation to have done disruption sooner if it is in fact the way that we anticipated. Jags, did you want to showcase that?
I suppose so. Definitely, it's an odd situation, right? Like, I think this is all coming because of this, renewed interest in the letters of marque discussion, which is, one way that I think a lot of conversations have around hackback have kind of found solid footing over the past few years. Just to say, like, if we could do this for like privateers engaging in sort of piracy management back in the day, why can't we do that for allowing folks to do a certain amount of hacking back? I don't think that Google is talking about going full offensive. I think it's just sort of like ceasing on the moment where there is this expectation of it. And frankly, I don't want to dissuade them at all. Like, I'm all for disruption to be more of like an out loud, straight up, like, we're going to do this kind of thing. I think more companies should do it within their own stakeholdings, but it does get you into some odd configurations where you go, well, like, A, like, why weren't you doing this before? And B, what exactly is it that we're saying you're going to be able to get out of your way to do? Because I don't think any hacking is ever really going to happen, right? I don't think Google's lawyers will ever have the stomach to properly take that one on. But you can also figure out that, like, there's a bunch of ways they could have been doing this in the first place that required none of that. Right? Like,
All right, Dakota, we're back to you. Price in disruption. So, what does China's system tell us about upcoming US private sector disruption campaigns?
Yeah, I mean, so when we think about the disruptions by companies, as Jags was talking about on the last topic, I think that we in the US and like allied governments are trying to figure out a response to Chinese hacking campaigns. And the responses have included disruption, but they've also included naming and shaming, indictments, etc. And I just think that we're kind of walking around the real crux of the issue, which is that China is using a market to fulfill a lot of its collection requirements, which means that there is a pricing function associated with parts of China's offensive ecosystem. So if you make defense better, if you name and shame people, if you grab people when they go overseas for vacation, all of that just gets pushed into the price function. And so if you're asking somebody to go out and collect information, but they know that they can't go vacation in Italy anymore because they'll get picked up, the price is going to increase on those services. And that resilience in the market function is the same reason so many other policy campaigns against or trying to prohibit certain activities or markets really frequently fail, is because there's a consumption problem, not a production issue. And so unless the Chinese government decides that they're going to stop paying for companies to collect intelligence, the price will just fluctuate based on how good defense is and the outcomes of U.S. policy discussions.
I don't know, man. I like, you have this sort of very interesting, you have a very interesting system there, right? Like, and the disparities are not just along the lines of like how you're portioning out some of these operations to these specific organizations, but also like, to what extent is that like something we will mirror, can mirror, or are even comfortable in any way actually pulling out of our own way for? And like, I think folks like Winona have had really good points about what you need in order to find some kind of feature parity with a country that produces, what is it? It's like they produce more like engineering graduates or software engineering graduates than we produce like college graduates, period. Right? Yeah. Like the order, there's an order of magnitude difference here to how we're operating, and I don't think we're adapting to it in the slightest.
Completely.
Yeah, we're moving on. Jags, I didn't want to get you with the horn because I got you twice in a row.
Fair. Appreciate it.
So I'll let you run on that one.
Yeah.
Steve, AI attacks, are they rising? Like, there's a lot of hype around this. Where are we today from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think this has been an interesting, like, evolving story. There's been, quite a bit of industry reporting about some fines via Virus Total and some other places around the first, like, let's say autonomous, like the cradle to grave AI driven ransomware attack. Everything is driven by AI. And so we've kind of watched that play out in the industry space for like a week-ish. And then it turns out, plot twist, it's a bunch of NYU graduate students doing a proof of concept. So one, I don't want to downplay that because of who ended up doing it, because the facts are the facts, and that's interesting. I also do think there's this like profound question of, is that a legitimate research project? Like, is that what we need out of academia, is showing that you can use AI to automate a ransomware attack, which I think all of us know you can. So that's where I'm at on this one.
For educational purposes only.
Got ya.
Fair enough.
All right, immortal dictators. Dakota, sounds like Xi Jinping and Putin are planning to live forever. What's
I mean,
What a
I
world.
was just, you really can't make it up. And I love when they say the quiet part out loud and they just do the most heinous crap that you can come up with. So it took me back to middle school reading this book called House of Scorpion, where it details this kid's life. He grows up in a remote house somewhere in Mexico with a caretaker, and he has no idea why he is so isolated. And it's not until the apex of the book that he learns that he's actually one of 5 or 6 other clones of the head of a cartel. And he is
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
don't
great.
read
Don't
this-
read House of Scorpion
Thanks,
now,
man.
viewers.
Wow.
Not
Sorry,
cool,
I didn't mean to
Dakota.
hurt House of Scorpion book sales, 20 years after it's out. The young adult market, I understand, it's very robust. However, basically premise of the book is that, he's being grown to be harvested for organs to keep this cartel, chief alive. And that's exactly what Xi and Putin were gabbing about, being like, oh yeah, we could just do organ transplants, like,
That was missing from the boys from Brazil, right? Like that's what we'd missed is that's why you grow the clones. It's not successors. You need them for organ harvesting. Like I feel like this is the kind of thing where you're just giving the QAnon folk like just a little more material to go on. And like if you read the reporting carefully, you can tell whomever's writing the story, like they're like the interpreter said that they said this, and this interpreter from Russian said they said that. And like at no point do we want to say like Putin and Xi were essentially talking about like organ harvesting to live forever. But I feel like those folks are going to have a fucking field day with that.
Who had to tell Putin that they got caught saying it?
Right.
Who's that poor person?
The AP.
All right, moving on to onions. Steve, this is for you. Extra onions?
Yeah, so if we're talking about our reading preferences, it's no House of Scorpion, but The Onion is absolutely the best subscription I pay for every single month. If you do not get The Onion in hard copy, you are missing out. Also, it just takes me back to the olden days of when I was on college campus where they actually had physical Onion copies laying around. Anyway, I just think it's incredible. They are trying to buy up the bankrupt InfoWars entire apparatus. So I just want to say I'm +1 for it. I just love the chaos and insanity of a satire paper buying up InfoWars as they've lost everything effectively and are now in sell-off. Like, that sounds like an Onion article.
I mean, I think it's the perfect resolution to the InfoWars saga. It's just a vapid place on the internet for horrible things to occur. And I love that this is the version of justice that we're getting. I also love that the Onion was able to do something that like literally all publicly traded and like billionaire owned media couldn't do, which is figure out how to get a print subscription model to work. It's literally like the Onion, the Economist, and the Financial Times, I think, are the only like print media groups that are profitable in their print subscriptions. So I just think maybe some of the other media outlets could talk to the Onion about what they're doing correctly to get those print subscriptions off the ground.
I think you said it yourself, right? Like the billionaire owners of these other places, right? Like it's the same problem with private equity buying these security companies, right? You start to judge the success of something that has like an organic following by whether it can do like 100x, 1000x multipliers. You're like, no, it can't. It's not the business model.
All right, some ships being targeted, Iranian vessels being targeted. I think, Steve, this is your topic.
Yeah, so this is going to be, in some ways parallel to the APT-29 story, of which this is an old story made new again. This is not the first time this has occurred, but I think is interesting for the implications. You've got Iranian threat actors. I won't rehash all the discovery, but Iranian threat actors trying to actually compromise vessels. They're not trying to gain information about vessels. They're not trying to compromise a port. They are trying to compromise the actual vessels, particularly as they are underway. So again, like if anyone's ever dealt with any kind of shipborne IT, it's problematic. Like it's like dealing with hospital infrastructure in some ways, or POS terminals. Like it is fragile. It has very limited bandwidth. It is not the easiest thing to secure, and it's problematic to compromise for all the same reasons it's problematic to keep secure. So this is not an easy topic to pull off. And it's also something like you don't get a lot back unless what you absolutely care about is something about that vessel or in some way, shape, or form. So I think, again, some of these intrusions, we talk about all of them as if they're the same, but some of these are different. Some of the intrusions by default tell you what they're doing. And this is like Defense Exhibit A. This is the Iranians telling you they deeply care about these vessels, particularly as they are underway. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this intrusion. And it's just a neat example if you get that real nice bright line. And again, they've done it before, so this really matters to them.
Yeah. It's similar to Fiona Cunningham makes a compelling argument about China using cyber to substitute for other areas of deterrence. And in this case, it's not cyber substitution so much as it is like cyber trying to make up for the things we don't have, which is missiles to hit boats.
Okay, last topic. I feel like the OG platform, the YouTubers, the millennials are fighting back. And shout out to Vic on our stream. He's turning up every month. We've got a question for you, Vic, at the end. But tell us about what's our YouTube fam doing? How are they fighting back? Steve, I think this was with you.
Yeah, so what you basically got is you got a bunch of online scammers primarily going after the elderly. They feel that's a vulnerable community. And then like you just got a bunch of YouTubers that got together and said enough is enough and like ran hardcore at these scammers, unveiled their operation, kind of like really went after this thing cradle to grave. So again, like lots and lots of things I love about this. 3 things I love most of all. One is like at some point enough is enough. Like it's just not cool going after the old timers. Like I know no victim is okay, but like it's just not fair. 2, I just love that a collection of people just decided on the whim, you know what? We're going to draw a line here this far and no further. These folks didn't know each other. This is not like the anonymous collective. They're not voting on what they're going to do. These people were just in chats together and said, I'm done. Now I'm pissed. Let's go after these dudes. And the third part, the part I really, really like about this, and we see this all the time in the attribution business and industry, is once you kind of pierce the veil, it becomes, in many cases, really straightforward to do attribution. It is not that hard unless you put massive amounts of efforts into protecting your identity to not be got in the internet age. And I just love that lesson.
A lot of that just tends to come down to, do we have the resources and visibility to be able to point? Because once you do, what you end up seeing is like, are they in a place where we can grab them? Like, that's really it. It's like, oh, yeah. Thank God, like the money mules and whatnot, the folks sort of like doing the last mile of it are in the US, in California. Go pick those dudes up. Like a lot of the frustration here is like, you've got the call center in India, you've got some folks literally being held like as prisoners in some part in like Malaysia or whatever. Yeah. And you go, okay, what do we do other than like shut off phones? Because who the hell's still using that? I'm just trying to stop myself before you cut me off. I'm like, yeah. Pavlovian response.
Just got you like walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
Hey, the power of this horn, let me tell you, it's really going to
your
my
head, man. Yep.
Yeah. All right, guys, we've got time for a couple of questions, and there's some good ones in the chat. So one was related to the WhatsApp, an Apple 0-day topic, is from Vic. He just wanted to know, was it was it as a text message? I think, Dakota, we shared a link that you gave to us to kind of put that out into the comments, but can you maybe elaborate on a little bit further?
Yeah, well, first I would elaborate on what you should do as a WhatsApp user if you want to prevent this, which is to screen unidentified callers. That's one of the best things you can do to stop zero-click payloads from being delivered. And then go into your settings and turn off auto download on every single media type. That way, files that are sent to you are not automatically downloaded onto your device. I'm not sure about whether any of those would work on the particulars of this, this zero-click malware package. It's also unclear to me whether or not the victims even received a notification that something was delivered to their device. And so I don't know if we could even really properly call it a text message, more as the payload was delivered through WhatsApp.
I think my guess here, because like once again, like we're kind of reconstructing things from bits and fragments, is right before this release, there was Apple 0 day in Image IO that was like kind of, they basically just said like, hey, we patched this thing in Image IO, and that's all you knew about the component. So like right off the bat, it's like, okay, knowing that this is connected to that Image IO bit, you go, my assumption here is they're delivering something via WhatsApp that is abusing an image parser of some sort. And, you know, that's how you're at least getting that initial portion of getting onto the device. And it turns out that the best mitigation for that is to buy an iPhone 17. So I hope you're ready to pre-order.
Apple plug one day after announcement.
Exactly. They're like, the only way to protect against this is our brand new memory mitigations, only available on iPhone 17. So,
I mean, LinkedIn.
that one hurt all JD.
Yep.
What is going on? Like, honestly.
Look, I'm excited about the protections. I just hate how we got here, right? Like, there is a reason why you're like, oh, does that mean inspectability? Like, are we going to know these things are happening? They're like, nope, but the walls to that panic room are just getting thicker and thicker. You go, well, I hope I'm in there alone. Thanks, Apple. Right? Like,
love it. Love it. He's back. He didn't stray too far, you know.
No.
No. All right, next question. This is another good one on LinkedIn. Jags, I'm going to go to you because you actually spoke on this topic recently when you were at Black Hat. In today's world, AI world, what do you think we should be doing in terms of adjusting our jobs and our skill sets? This comes from actually a student who's logged in to watch the stream. So what advice would you give to people coming through into the workforce?
I mean, it obviously super contingent on what side of the workforce or what industry, what area of interest you've got. But what I'll say is
bioinformatics. Sorry, bioinformatics.
All right. Well, so I don't have any very particular advice in that given area, but what I'll say is it's important to kind of conceptualize this whole AI situation on the right terms. And I think that folks aren't really getting a fair shake at that because the hype means that we're like kind of wrapping this thing up in a way that's disingenuous. It doesn't help you understand what it is that this thing does. So forget the term AI, even forget the large language model bit. Essentially, what we've come up with as a species is a really good form of lossy compression, which is to say we have a really good way of taking a whole lot of information and essentially compacting it in a way that still makes some degree of sense. And that's really important for researchers and for folks who want to learn things in a way that I wish I was a student. I wish I had the kind of time once again, because I wish I'd had these resources back then. When you mention something like bioinformatics or like anything in like biology, there's actually an immense amount of interest of what the applications of AI are going to be for things in bio and chem, because the expectation here is that that is actually one of the few ways that the frontier labs might be able to recoup their insane level of investment, right? When you say, the minute that OpenAI can mint, protein adjacent patents to existing medication, you can get an OpenAI branded Viagra for like a fraction of a cent because they never did any of the R&D, then, there's a lot of expectations there. So more specifically as a student, essentially the tool you've got in your hands is a compressed representation of all, like, as much human knowledge as we could shove at this thing. And it's something that means that in many ways you can level up in whole areas of your industry that it was an unreasonable expectation to say that a bio person is going to understand, let's say, this aspect of information retrieval or databasing or front end design, etc. But those were the things that used to limit folks from creating things, producing things, or even just instrumenting what their idea could have been for the right kind of study tool, for the right kind of project, for the right kind of research. Back in my day, we would have said, well, that would be awesome, but I would need to assemble a small startup worth of people to create this thing that some of us may find useful. So the ROI never made sense. The ROI calculation has changed drastically. So I think this is a good time to go back to the drawing board wherever you are in life and say, what were the cool ideas? What were the things I was passionate about? What were the things I wanted or I wished for that I said, yeah, but that's not worth my time, or yeah, but that would be awesome, but I don't have the support to do that. And reassess that. And if it's still not the time, reassess that in 6 months, because what's changed is the amount of autonomy that each human being can instrument on their own. And that is like a categorical set of like cascading changes that I think our minds are just not at all ready for.
I would think too, just jumping on this one as well. Like, I think this is an evergreen question, meaning like technology X has shown up and it's changing the labor force. What do I do now? Like, AI will not be the last one of these. If I go in the Wayback Machine of old timey Steve Stone, like my first email address I got as a freshman in college because it was the only way to register for class. And then I had to get a paper book and walk around. Like, nobody was saying email is out, the workforce is destroyed. And there's 100 examples. Now, AI has some unique aspects, but there will be something on the other side of AI. Like, I think this is a really important question. We, as the older folks in industry, and those of us, like all of us on this session here, like, we support academia in different methods. I don't think we do a good enough job reinforcing this. Every single group will have to pivot in their career. So, like, how do you get good at that? I think that is a really important discussion to be had versus I'm in this moment. How do I get out of this moment? And I'm not trying to be heavy-handed with the question asker. I think this is an evergreen topic that every student and frankly, every career person should be asking almost every single day.
Yeah, totally agree. Great points, guys. And thanks for the questions out there on the stream. We're going to come to the end. Gentlemen, well done. Thank you. Episode 5 is a wrap. Drea, we missed you. We'll see you back next month. To everyone who logged in, we'll be back same time in October. And if you missed this, we're on Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. There's recordings. So thanks very much, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Hello.